The name of that song is Michigan Cherry, and it was performed by the band River Whyless. And my special guest today is Alex McWalters from River Whyless. Alex, welcome to the Friday Afternoon Music Mix.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I got a copy of your brand new album called Monofloral from your radio promoter. I loved it. We talked, and I decided that this would be a great time to have you on the program, especially you've got a tour coming up that will bring you into the Pacific Northwest. So when this airs, it will be, right before your gig in Seattle. And it was a perfect time to have you on the show. And I wanted to talk about your music and the upcoming tour and, of course, your new album that's coming out. Can you tell me a little bit? I understand that three of the four of you, all but Daniel Sheeran, met as students at Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina, and that kind of got things going.
That is correct. And actually, Dan was also a student at App State. He was a year ahead of us and was playing in a different band all throughout the time that we were forming and sort of cutting our teeth in Boone. So Dan was sort of on the periphery of our band all along. Yeah, so we were sort of students who didn't know. None of us were music students, so we weren't studying music. We were just sort of people who had been playing music on our own. And Ryan was like, actually had never really played more than a couple chords on his guitar. Caught the bug when he met me because I was very deep in wanting to be a musician. So he and I started a band initially, just the two of us, and just like playing in people's basements and wherever we could find a place to play because we lived in a dorm room, so we couldn't set up shop there. Met Hallie later on, had a couple people, other people in the group. Yeah, just did what bands do when they're first starting out, which is like play a lot of shows and sound really terrible for a long time, and just sort of work your way through figuring out what your sound is and how you want to go about doing this, and just practice. We practiced a lot. We were one of those bands who, for better or for worse, were sort of taking ourselves very seriously from the very beginning, even when we weren't like really deserving of that. So we rehearsed like 3 or 4 times a week and just tried to really get ourselves in shape. And then after we finished school, we moved to Asheville, which in our minds was like the big city. Because for anybody who doesn't know Boone, it's a very small mountain town in North Carolina, basically just a college town. So coming to Asheville was like a big deal for us. We weren't quite ready to make a jump to like, we thought about moving to Nashville or maybe like New York or Boston or something, but that didn't feel right coming from Boone. So we wanted to stay in the mountains, stay relatively close by to what was inspiring to us as far as the natural world goes. And so, yeah, Asheville was our next place, and it just felt like the right place. Dan actually also happened to have moved to Asheville as a musician in a different band. So we were on parallel tracks all the way through. And then when our bass player left around 2011, our original bass player left the band, and Dan's band was actually in the process of sort of disbanding also. So it was just a very serendipitous way in which we got together and incorporated Dan into the band. And it's been that way ever since.
Well, and let's point out that you're the drummer.
Yes.
And then the other members of the band are Ryan O'Keefe, who plays guitar, Hallie Anderson, who plays fiddle, and of course, you just mentioned Daniel Sheeran, who is your bass player and also plays harmonium. One of the things that that I thought was funny, you're the only one that doesn't sing.
Correct.
That's great. So you've
Yeah.
got this 3-part harmony going. Well, you're bringing them in on percussion then.
Yeah. You don't want to hear me sing. Trust me. I'm not, I'm
Oh,
not
that's
included in
fun.
that. Yeah.
You've been politely excluded. That's incredible. I like that. Your first LP came out in 2015. It's called A Stone, a Leaf, An Unfound Door, self-titled, and that was in 2012, excuse me, a self-titled EP in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
2016, your second full-length album came out, We All the Light. 2018, a third album called Kindness. And then your most recent one, which just was released, is called Monofloral. I love, by the way, Alex, I love the artwork on that cover. I think it's terrific. Who did that for you?
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to admit that I can't. The name is escaping me right now. It's Justin somebody, and I'm sorry to
No,
this
that's
artist
okay.
whose name I cannot remember. But his it makes me feel terrible because he worked really hard on this artwork, and we had a lot of back and forth exchanges. And he was just a very intimate part of the process of coming up with the art that we're all really proud of. So I apologize for not remembering the name right now.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of that record cover. I think it's my favorite of all the artwork we've put out. So yeah, very happy that it's finally seeing the light of day.
Good. Let's do a second song from the new album, Monoflora. How about Fast Like a Match? Sound good?
Sounds great.
If heaven is a dim light from your mouth to mine, still I dream completeness from another's kiss, sweetness from another's lips, slow down. When do I let it rest? When do I leave? A piece of me was built by this babe. It was a former kiss, the madness on young lovers' lips. Rest like a match, loving the old love up until the new love. I believe in you, love. You have my heart. The life, the life, the life, the life that brings me joy, to roam across the country with all my foolish boys. The crowd's got a hold on me. Wanna stay here at my best, clinging to the dim light until there's no light left. Love in the old love up until the new love. I believe in you, love. You have my heart. It eats every word. It needs like a bird with an ace to my chest. Slow down.
It's another terrific song off of that album. I really have enjoyed this. And one of the things that I read about that impressed me with what you did with this album, different than the others that you did, was you did not use a producer on this particular album. The four of you decided that you'd do the producing on it. Not only that, I assume that your effort on this songwriting is collaborative, where all four of you participate in that.
Pardon me, I had to address a barking dog there in the background. This is still part of the COVID universe in which we live, I think. Yes, so did decide to produce this record ourselves. It's a kind of a fun thing to talk about because it was something that felt like it came full circle in a way in terms of our quote unquote career. Because the first record that we made, A Stone to Leave an Unfound Door, was also self produced, but not because we wanted it to be necessarily, but because it sort of had to be. So, you know, as I said earlier, we were a band. We had just moved to Asheville maybe a year before when we started making Stone. And we recorded the whole thing in like the extra bedroom of our rental house in Asheville and had a bunch of mediocre secondhand recording equipment and virtually no experience, you know, with audio engineering or recording or producing. So we were sort of learning as we went and watching a lot of YouTube videos and reading a lot of Tape Op magazine and trying to figure out how to make a record, which was cool and fun and helped us. You know, we learned a lot. But does it sound like the best record we've ever made? No, not really. And then going from there, we were obviously aspiring to work with somebody in a studio and have a producer. So I'm grateful that we got to the point where we could do that. Worked with Justin Ringel of Horse Feathers on We All the Light. And then in 2018, we worked with Paul Butler on Kindness a Rebel. And those were both amazing experiences. But after doing that with Monoflora, we felt like, okay, we've had those experiences. They've been unique in their own ways. Now we feel like we are capable, both with the equipment we own and with the experience we have as engineers and producers. We could do this ourselves and just see how it goes. Because the thing about having I call myself half a songwriter, so 3.5 songwriters in the band. I write lyrics. I don't write the melodies, right? So I'm like contributing to the lyrics now and then. And so in that way, I am a songwriter. And of course, I'm helping with the arrangements. But anyway, so the 3.5 songwriters in the band. There's a lot of opinions flying around. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. So one thing you're always trying to navigate is sort of mitigating the clutter, whatever the opinions and having to work at the politics, essentially. So we wanted to try and just do it on our own, and we felt we could at least take a stab at it. Yeah. So the Monoflora experience was like, okay, we are now coming to this no producer and no real studio by choice, not because we don't have the money or wherewithal. And that was a nice way to sort of come back around to the original experience of making a record. And it felt really good for that reason. If that makes any sense. It's like, here we are again, just the four of us, and we get to sort of test ourselves in this realm of audio engineering and producing and just doing everything from the ground up, not just the arranging and writing, but the recording as well. So we're proud of that at this point. I think the record sounds sonically more interesting. I wouldn't say better, but more interesting than Stone, just by way of what we've learned over the course of our, again, quote unquote, career.
You should be proud. It's absolutely produced exceptionally. I really noticed that right off the bat, and I was surprised when I read that, that you had gone away from using a professional producer, because as far as I'm concerned, you're professional producers. It sounds really, really good. My special guest today is Alec McWalters of the band River Whyless. You can see more on their website at riverwhyless.com. I assume you're on all the social media too, aren't you, Alex?
Indeed.
And they will be featured at Tractor Tavern in Seattle on August 23rd. Doors open at 7 p.m. The show is at 8 p.m. Oh, by the way, I wanted to point out that there's some names here that I wanted to ask you about. One of them is the name of your new album. I understand that has a lot to do with an Emily Dickinson poem, the Monoflora. Tell me a little bit about that, if you would, please.
It's kind of a long story, so I'll do my best to keep it short. But there is a song on the record called "To Fight Aloud Is Very Brave," and that is actually an Emily Dickinson poem that we just straight up used. So the lyrics of that song are Emily Dickinson's words, and we just set music to it. I can't quite remember the origin of how that happened. I think we were just looking for inspiration at some point and stumbled upon this poem and just thought, what the hell, let's just use the poem itself. It's so good, and see how that goes. And so Emily Dickinson was already in the record. And then Hallie is the one who came up with this idea of Monoflora. I think she had been out hiking or something. She had somehow come across this idea of this flower. So Monoflora is an actual flower. It's also known as a ghost pipe. And if you look it up, it's like a really interesting colorless flower. And she had brought this up to us as a possible name for the record. And we were as you do, you sort of toss things at the wall and see what sticks. In the process of thinking about that, I did some Googling or whatever and found that ghost pipe or Monoflora is one of Emily Dickinson's favorite flowers. And it's actually featured in her first collection of poetry. It's on the cover of like her handmade collection of poetry that she put out many, many years ago. So there was a strange moment of serendipity there, or synchronicity, or whatever the word is, where we were like, oh, Emily Dickinson comes up again. And then I was also out hiking on my own land and stumbled across the actual flower as we were making the record. We were like in the studio and I was taking a break, was out hiking, and I saw the flower out in the wild. And I was like, okay, that's it. what other sign do I need that this is the right title for the record? So that's how that came about. Yeah.
It's a great story. Thank you. Also, I wanted to ask you, the name River Whyless, where does that name come from?
Whyless is a word, Whyless, for those who are like, a lot of people say like, what? What are you saying? Is Whyless is a word that I took from E. E. Cummings, so another poem or poet. I can't remember the poem itself. The context was he was describing the sky as the whyless sky. And I just found that to be very ponderous and lovely. And so we stole that word from him. And then river is just a word that we liked to pair with that as indicative where we live and what inspires us. So it just felt like a nice combination of words.
Two great stories. Thank you for sharing those with me. I really appreciate it. You're getting ready to start your tour, which actually starts out on the West Coast and then down through California, Oregon, and over to the Southwest, where Phoenix and into New Mexico. And then I see that one of the last shows in mid to late September, you'll be at the Basement in Nashville. That's one of my favorite places to see shows, believe it or not. I talk about intimate. That is an intimate location. You know.
I love that place.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man, I just want to say, like, and I think a lot of people can understand this, whether you're a musician or not, but I'm just very happy to be back out on the road after so long, having to take a break. So we did one tour in April on the East Coast, and this is our West Coast run coming up. I'm just really happy to be coming back out West. The Northwest is probably my favorite place to play. And I'm not just saying that. So I'm excited to be coming back through Seattle and the Northwest and then going down. And yeah, the Basement it feels like it's been ages since I played there, and I love it. So I'm really excited to come back to that place as well. Yeah.
That would be great. My special guest today is Alex McWalters. He is the drummer for the band River Whyless. They have a brand new album out, a fantastic new album called Monofloral that's available on, I assume, all the outlets, isn't it, Alex?
Yes, sir.
And they're starting their tour for this summer and fall. Tractor Tavern will be one of the locations they'll be playing at in Seattle, and that will be on Tuesday, August the 23rd. Doors open at 7 p.m., and the show is at 8 o'clock p.m. You can get more information on the band and on the tour on their website at riverwhyless, WHYLESS.com. Alex, thank you so much for joining me here this morning. I wish you for all just the greatest. And, maybe sometime, since you like the Pacific Northwest so well, the next time you come back through this area, we can have you. Things will be a little more calmed down, and we could have the four of you in the studio and have you on the air live, which would be a lot of fun.
I would love that. Thank you.
Let's go out with one more song from this new album, Monofloral. This is called Promise Rings. Thanks again, Alex. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.